Hey everybody, welcome to the GymCrafter podcast. My name's Tim, head gym nerd over at gymcrafter.com. You can find me there. You can also find me at GymCrafter on Instagram, and then of course at the GymCrafter YouTube channel. Well, I'm starting a podcast, and this is episode 1, so thanks for joining me. And let's start with why a podcast? Because the world needs another podcast, right? No, the world does not need another podcast. So if you followed me or if you're new, gymcrafter.com, I started building 6-8 years ago, something like that, just as a side project as I built my own home gym. And I've been working out at home since I was 13, but I was time to build a serious home gym. I had some medical issues going on, which we'll actually talk about in this episode. And it was time to build a real home gym. And what I found was that there was so much garbage information out there. So many people trying to sell me stuff. So many people, I'll never forget, I looked up on Amazon one time the 20 best squat racks. Now, how there can be 20 best of anything, I have no idea. But I'm looking at this article and all 20 things were Amazon items, and literally 16 of them weren't even squat racks. There were parallel bars and stretching platforms and all kinds of crazy stuff. So that made me start to collect all the research I was doing and publish it on GymCrafter to hopefully help other people in my situation. I wasn't a power lifter. I wasn't a gym rat. I needed to build a gym to get back into shape, build a lot of strength. And it was so hard to find the information I wanted. So I started GymCrafter. And over the last 6 years, it's succeeded more than I could have ever hoped. It's now my full-time job. I do GymCrafter for a living. I love garage gym stuff. I've learned to love working out. I wasn't always that way. And I really love helping people. And this has given me an opportunity to do all of those things. So I quit my career of 30 years and dove in. And over time, the website traffic has declined for a lot of different reasons. But in this day and age, I really think that a lot of people just aren't reading long form content. There's still a lot of you out there that like the detailed articles, and I'll keep writing them for you folks. But I just wasn't reaching as many people as I wanted. So I started the YouTube channel. And on the YouTube channel, the way that YouTube works is if you want people to actually see the stuff you're putting out, you have to kind of tailor it to single subject videos. They kind of have to be short, although if you've watched my videos, they're not short. But that's helpful on YouTube to grow. People have what they call TikTok brain, so they don't want to spend a lot of time watching things. And there's a lot of nuance when you're building a home gym. And there's a lot of different details and intricacies when you're putting together a garage or a basement gym that not only fits your needs, but you're actually going to end up using, and it's actually going to benefit you. And a lot of that nuance just doesn't come through on the articles. It doesn't come through on the YouTube videos. The short stuff I do on Instagram, while it's fun and it's a good follow over there, hopefully, it just doesn't relay everything to help somebody build a home gym. So I'm actually I'm just starting rebuilding my garage gym from scratch. So I thought, what better time to start a podcast so that you and I could sit down once or twice a week and talk about the process of building a home gym. And hopefully, when we get enough episodes in, that anybody down the road who's deciding to build a home or a garage gym can find this podcast, start at episode 1, work their way through and end up with a gym that they really love, that they use, that benefits their lives and make their lives better. So that's why a podcast. Hopefully I fulfill on that. Just drop this right now. You can always email me questions at tim@gymcrafter.com. We are going to be doing some Q&A episodes. Over the last 6 years, I've helped literally thousands of people build home gyms. Some of them have worked out, some of them haven't. Some of them, I've got these great emails from people talking about how it's changed their lives, and other people have said they've sold all their stuff on Facebook Marketplace because it just turned into an expensive place to hang their clothes. And I'm sure I've been there before. I've been the proud owner of 2 Bowflex machines in my life. So both of them turned into places to hang my laundry. I'm sure a lot of you guys can relate. So we want to really help people build something that's going to last. So this first episode, we're gonna focus on 2 really important things. When I first start talking to somebody about building a home gym, we always start with these 2 things, because if you nail down these 2 things and you really get a good understanding of them, the rest of the process really falls into place. Otherwise, what happens is if you start by going on YouTube and going, what's a good home gym? You end up with stuff like you see behind me. For those of you just listening on audio, you can't see that I'm sitting in my gym. Right behind me, there's a rack of 6 barbells with 2 more on the rack, 4 in the corner, 2 more over here, 1 on the floor. I've got tons of weight plates over here. It's a pretty big home gym. Keep in mind, this is not only my job, but it's my hobby. I love this stuff. And I know that's not most people that build home gyms, but if you're just an average person who's just trying to get something to get in shape, this can be intimidating. And unfortunately, this can be the picture of what a home gym is supposed to be. And that's not the case at all. The other side of that is we go to our neighbors who have a home gym and it's an exercise bike or a treadmill. And I got news for you, that's not a home gym. That's an exercise bike or a treadmill. And that can be an important part of a home gym. But what we're going to talk about today is not only what is a home gym, and I think it's a really important concept to understand because it's not what most people think. And then even more important than that, why are you building a home gym? Simon Sinek wrote a book that got a lot of publicity and that I thought was a little repetitive, but I think the point of the book was good, which is all great success stories in life start with why. They start with their purpose. They start with why they're doing something. And I think a lot of people, when they build home gyms, they don't really understand their why, or they have a why that's just not going to work out for them. So I worked at Apt Electronics in Glenview, Illinois for 20 years. And if you're in the Chicagoland area, you know who Apt is. And inside there, they're a retail electronics and appliance store. It's this big palatial store that has everything you could possibly want in it. People go there on the weekends just to hang out and have fun. It's a really cool store. Well, they've got a large fitness area. And I was standing in the fitness area as I did a lot. And I remember this lady came in. We get a lot of customers from the North Shore in Chicago. And she said, I want to buy a Peloton. This was when Peloton first came out. And I'll remember the salesperson asked her, said, hey, we don't carry Peloton, but we do carry. And he took her over to the spin bikes. Spin bikes, if you're not familiar, they're a special kind of exercise bike that you use for spin class. There's some unique design elements to them. And she looked at him and said, I don't want an exercise bike. I want a Peloton. And we were both kind of stunned, and he looked at her and scratched his head and said, what do you think a Peloton is? She goes, well, I'm not really sure, but my neighbor said I should get one because I wanted to lose some weight. That's a great example of a terrible why. My neighbor said I should do this, so I'm going to do this thing, and I have no real idea of what it is or why I'm doing it. I'm just doing what somebody else said. I've known a lot of people, and let me start with a caveat. I have nothing against CrossFit. I think CrossFit has done wonders for people's health. I think it's gotten women involved in barbell and strength training, which has been amazing because it's the best way to get in shape. It's not spending hours running around the block. They've done a lot of really good things. But being in the room with somebody who really likes CrossFit is like being in a room with a vegan. They are not happy unless you follow their way of life completely. Like they're only happy if you do what they do. So I've known a lot of people who have close friends who got into CrossFit and close friends who became vegans and decided to do that because they were convinced. And they didn't have the same why as those people. Committed vegans, God bless them, they really care for animals. And that's an awesome reason to do that. And I give them all the credit in the world for doing that. I'm not going to do that. Please don't convince me to do that. But good for you. And same thing with CrossFit. People who find CrossFit and the community that it involves and they like that type of training, they really like it. Unfortunately, it's not for everybody. So I've known a lot of people who have started CrossFit because they want to get in shape, and then all of a sudden their idea of fitness is puking in a bucket in the corner, and that doesn't match what they wanted. So I think finding a good why and finding what your actual reason for wanting to build a home gym is can do a couple of things. Number one, if you know your why, you're going to be consistent. And the single most important thing about building a home gym is, are you going to be consistent? Building it so that you're consistent. People ask me all the time, they say, which cardio machine burns the most calories? And the answer is the one you're actually going to use. I don't care if a rower burns more calories than a treadmill. If you're going to use a treadmill and you're not going to use a rowing machine, then you should buy a treadmill because you're going to use it. So when we're looking at how people build their home gyms and their whys, knowing your why is going to keep you motivated and keep you consistent. It's also going to direct what you buy. So let me give you some examples of people that I've worked with in the past and really helped them drill down into their why. And I made some notes. So I'll never forget, one guy came to me and he says, my doctor says that I should start working out. And so that's what I want to build a home gym to do that. I'm not comfortable going to a commercial gym. I'd rather do it at home. So can you help me build a home gym? And I said, okay, well, if you don't mind asking, other than your doctor said so, why do you want to do this? And he couldn't answer the question. And so I said, go home and think about it and really think about why you want to start working out. Because your doctor saying so is, I've got an uncle who his doctor told him he should work out every time he saw him. You know when he started working out? When he had a heart attack. So a heart attack's a really good why. I don't want to have a heart attack again is a great why. And so I told this guy that story. And so he went home and started thinking about it. And he said, you know, I really don't care what my doctor says, but I've noticed that I can't do the following things. And man, I would really like to do those things. He had been bowling his whole life. And believe it or not, he was so unhealthy he couldn't go bowling anymore. And that's no offense to bowlers. I bowl all the time, but you don't need to be the most physically fit person to bowl. And if he couldn't bowl, you can imagine the shape that he was in. So he found a better why. Who cares what his doctor wants? It's what do you want? There's another one where I had an older, and I tend to train folks in their 50s and 60s. I'm in my 50s, so that's naturally the folks who I train. I'm a certified personal trainer, certified strength and conditioning coach. So I do train people in addition to doing this for a living. And I remember somebody came to me and they said, I just want to get in better shape. You know, I'm getting older. I feel like I'm falling apart. I just, I'm achy. I can't do the things that I used to do anymore. And I said, okay, well, why is that important? And they looked at me for a minute and they couldn't answer the question. And I said, well, what else do you want to be able to do? What else do you look forward to being able to do if you were in better shape? And it turns out that their daughter was having their first grandkid. So we started talking about, what are you going to want to do with this grandkid? Well, I'm going to want to be able to, when they're young, I want to be able to get down on the floor and crawl around with them. So can you get down on the floor and crawl around now? No. If you are on the floor, can you get up without, clawing your way up on a chair or grabbing help? No. What about when they're older? What about when that grandkid learns to walk and they don't know that you're not in shape and they see you and they go, Grandma, and they come running up to you and they jump up into your arms? Are you going to be able to catch them and lift them up over your head and tickle them and watch them laugh? And all of a sudden she had her why. That why kept her going. Her grandkids are now, I think her first grandkid is now like 5 years old, and she plays with that kid all the time. She's that kid's favorite babysitter. Talk about a why. So I want to get in shape because I'm getting old, and I want to be able to enjoy life with my grandkid. Another retired person came to me and said, hey, I just retired, and I now have time to work out. And I can't tell you how many people, they spend their lives, there's an old saying, people spend their entire life trading their health for money. And at the end of their life, they would trade all of their money back for just a little bit of health. And I see so many people that say this, I just retired, I let myself go, but now I have time to work out. So, well, why do you want to work out? Well, because now I have time. But why? This particular person said, well, I saved up a bunch of money and I've got all these trips planned. I want to go to Italy. I want to go to Amsterdam. I want to go to Rome. I want to go to Paris. I want to go to all these different places. And I've been lucky enough to go to a lot of those places. So I looked at him and I said, do you understand how much walking you're going to have to do to see Paris the right way? Do you understand how much walking you're going to have to do to see Copenhagen and Amsterdam and enjoy those places? And they thought about it and they said, I never thought about it that way. Because here we drive everywhere, right? We get in our car, we drive to the museum, we get in our car, we drive to the store. Well, if any of you have been to Europe, you're not driving places, you're walking. Most people are bicycling, but if you're a tourist, you're going to walk a lot of places, or you're going to spend a ton of money on shady taxi drivers. And I had a few of those too. So, but when we started talking about that, all of a sudden, I want to work out because I couldn't before, which is a terrible why, became, I want to be able to actually go to Italy and enjoy it. I don't want to have to take a nap in the afternoon. I don't want to have to only be able to walk around half the day and then have to sit down the rest of the day. I see so many people when I travel who are out of shape and they spend their entire vacation sitting in cafes, sitting in restaurants. And don't get me wrong, there's some great cafes out there, but there is so much more to see. If you've ever been to the Louvre, you're walking all day long. That place is gigantic. If you can't walk, you're not going to have a good time there. By the way, if you go there, the Musée d'Orsay is so much more fun. But anyway, I'm sounding kind of bougie, and that's not me. So didn't mean to go down that road. But anyway, the point is that finding your why is where you start. So if you're thinking about building a home gym, or you're starting to build a home gym, really put some thought into your why. And a good exercise to go through is no matter what you say. A lot of people say, well, I want to lose weight. Why? Why do you want to lose weight? And you need to be able to answer that next question. Well, I want to be able to lose weight so it makes me feel better. Okay, why do you want to feel better? Well, I want to feel better because, my kid's just getting into football and I want to be able to catch with them. Okay, now we're getting someplace. Keep asking yourself why until you get to a reason that makes sense. And I promise that will lead you down the right path to building a home gym that you actually use. Because I got to tell you, look good naked sounds great until you've had a 12-hour day at work and you get home and you're too tired to work out. Look good naked isn't going to get you into the gym, especially if you're already in a relationship. You're like, I'm married. I can look good naked another time, right? And I'm sure a lot of us have been there. So why do you want to look good naked? And so go down that road with yourself. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that why, like I said, is going to drive the type of gym that you build. So I want to use myself as an example. So I have had 3 pretty major medical events in my adult life in the last 20 years. I just got over one, just still getting over it recently. But I'm going to use one of them. And this one is why I have the gym you see behind me, because it used to be, I was a big kettlebell guy. I had an open spot on my floor. I had a bunch of kettlebells. I did a lot of kettlebell training. I did I had a pull-up bar and some rings. That was my home gym for a while because that fit my goals at that time. Well, when I built this particular gym, it was in response to a pretty serious medical event. So I woke up in 2018 with a headache, and that headache never went away. I had that headache for 4.5 years. Now, luckily it wasn't a migraine headache. I could function with it. But anybody who's experienced chronic pain understands that having a headache that won't go away, and I'm talking no drugs would make it go away, no amount of aspirin would make it go away, no amount of gummies would make it go away, no amount of CBD would make it go away. Nothing made this thing go away. And I also have struggled my whole life with depression. So if you combine chronic pain with depression, you can imagine the kind of deep, dark hole that you end up in. So over this process, I started by seeing a neurologist. And I don't tell these stories to play in what I call the oppression Olympics. I tell these stories because I know there's other people out there in the same situation, and there's very little hope. And I want to try and impress upon people that if you're in a situation with chronic pain, that if you're in a situation with deep depression, that training in a home gym has saved me from those things multiple times. Also, you have never been in a more depressing place than the waiting room in a neurologist's office. You will count your lucky stars over and over and over again because you can look around and see just how much worse you can have it. So I'm not trying to paint myself as having some horrible problem that nobody else has had this problem before. But anyway, so I go to the neurologist and we try a bunch of different medicines. She finally looks at me and says, well, we need to do a spinal tap, which if you're not familiar, it's when they stick a giant needle in your spine and they draw out your spinal fluid. And they wanted to see if I had low pressure in my spinal column. So yay, that was not fun. Did that. They go, oh, well, you've got low pressure. We're going to try to do, and if you're squeamish, you might want to fast forward this part, but we're going to do something called an epidural blood patch. And I ended up having 2 of these. That's where they take one end of the needle, they put it in your spinal column. Then they run a tube to another needle and they stick it in your arm and they fill up your spinal column with your own blood. It feels terrible. It's really awful. A lot of pregnant women have had this. Some of you out there have had this. You know exactly what I'm talking about. It is an extraordinarily uncomfortable procedure. Those didn't work. So I found myself at the Mayo Clinic for 2 weeks. And I remember looking at my dad at one point who went with me. And I said, they're just guessing, aren't they? 4-hour MRI, more spinal taps. They did this radiocysternography, I think is what it was called. They injected this radioactive isotope into my spinal column and then took imaging things. I went through a lot of crap, guys. And it sounds like I'm rambling, but I'm telling you this for a reason. So three and a half years in, I had gained a ton of weight. I was up to about 250 pounds. I'm 6'6", but for me, that's still real. My ideal walking around weight's probably 205. So 45 pounds overweight, eating terribly, deeply depressed. And I remember distinctly sitting on my couch and going, well, you've got a couple of choices. We can just call it quits. And I think you guys know what that means. Or you can make your life better as much as you can, deal with the fact that you're going to have a headache forever, and at least get yourself healthy. So I decided to start working out. And again, I've been working out my whole life. So I went, fortunately, Apt has an amazing gym. Full hammer strength setup, basketball court, racquetball court, steam showers, really a great setup. And so I went in and I knew strength training would get me back in shape. I knew at that point something that a lot of people have yet to figure out, which is strength training is the best way to lose weight. The more muscle you build, the more calories your body burns, the less you have to restrict your diet. It's so much easier. It's so much more enjoyable. And we're going to talk a lot about that as this podcast progresses over the episodes. But I went back into the gym and I started lifting again. Two things happened. Number one, I went in and threw 185 on the bar to bench press. I had done that before with no problems, and I couldn't get the bar off of the rack. So I'm like, ooh, maybe I'll take some weight off. That's a lot. Maybe I haven't worked out longer than I thought. And if you're older like I am and you stop working out for any amount of time, you know that the weight comes on and the muscle falls off really, really quickly. So I went down to 135. I had to go down to 95 pounds, and I did 2.5 reps. So a couple of things happened. Number one, I was too embarrassed to work out at work, just to be perfectly honest. Part of it was ego from what I was able to lift before. Part of it was all the warehouse guys worked out and they're all repping 225, 305, and I'm like trying to work in with 95 pounds. That's not going to work. So I'm like, you need to build a gym at home. But more importantly, my headache when I finished lifting that day, it wasn't gone, but it was the first time that I'd ever felt any relief since I got my headache. So I immediately bought a bench and a set of power blocks. Actually, I think I had my power blocks. And I started lifting twice a day. And every time I lifted for about a half hour, my headache receded just a little bit. And the more I lifted, the more the headache receded. So I got to a point where I still had the headache. Turns out that stress from working in retail is what caused the headache. Not 6 months after quitting my retail job to do this for a living, the headache went away for good. So it was stress related, but lifting helped. And the more I lifted and the heavier I lifted and the more I exerted myself in the gym, the better I felt. I got to the point where I was coming into the gym and I wasn't doing a body part split per week. I was doing a 3-way split per day because every time I lifted, it helped my headache. And I'll never forget, I went back to the Mayo Clinic and I sat down with the doctor that I was dealing with, and he was following up and asking normal questions. And I told him, I said, hey, I found that, I cleaned up my diet because I'm trying to work to lose weight and I cut out a lot of sugar, but I found that lifting weights really helped. And he looks at me, and I'll never forget this. He looks at me and he says, oh yeah, there's tons of studies that show that resistance training helps headaches. This is why I told you all the stuff that they put me through. I literally wanted to punch this guy. I've never wanted to punch somebody more in my life. You mean you made me go through tons of drugs with crazy side effects, 4-hour MRIs. I've had God knows how many needles stuck in my spine and crazy stuff injected into my body. You made me go through all of that. And you didn't think to tell me to eat better and lift weights? Are you serious? And he looks at me and he says, Tim, if I tell 1,000 patients that lifting weights is going to help them, do you know how many will actually do it? Like 4. I'm like, what? So those 4 people don't matter? What kind of a doctor are you? Like, how irresponsible is that? And that's a big reason why I do this for a living. Because I know, and I've experienced firsthand, the power of having a gym in your house that matches your needs. I know what that can do to change your life. And not everybody needs heavy weights and racks, but I needed barbells and heavy weights and racks and lots of exertion. I did so many heavy farmer's carries because I found that total body exertion was one of the quickest ways to make my headache recede. So that why, that want to get rid of my headache, that is what not only drove the design of the gym that you see behind me, but that drove consistency to a level that I had never had before. You know, like I said, those two Bowflexes turned into clothes hangers really quick because I didn't have anything driving me to be consistent. It was much easier to go out and party than it was to work out. So this is why I'm harping on the why driving the gym itself. Now, I think it's important to talk about because, like I said, my why drove this specific gym. Your why is going to build a different kind of gym, most likely. So one of the two most common mistakes that I see from people who come to me for help building a home gym is they want to recreate one of a couple of things. First of all, they want to recreate the home gyms they've seen on YouTube. They want to recreate my gym. They want to recreate Coop's home gym. They want to recreate Gluck's amazing 3-car garage home gym. If you don't follow Gluck on YouTube, you're missing out. If you like home gym stuff, probably the best channel out there right now. But or they go on Instagram to home gym channels and they see all these neon lights and $100,000 light, and they think that that's a home gym. I'm sorry, guys, that 95% of you who are going to build a home gym are going to squeeze it in between your kids' bikes and a washing machine. You're not going to have a 3-car garage to convert. But people come in and they think that that's a home gym. So a lot of times they go, well, I don't have room for that, so I'm just not going to do anything. And that's a huge mistake. The second mistake that I see is a lot of people, they come from a commercial gym setting. And I used to work out in commercial gyms. I've been back to a few recently. I don't know what the heck has happened to the people in gyms these days. Maybe it's just the ones that there were cameras and tripods all over the place. There were people shooting up steroids in the locker room, like really crazy stuff. I'm like, what is going on in this place? There were people who wouldn't let you work in on machines, which like in my day was unheard of. So like a lot of people, they don't want to work out at those commercial gyms. They're uncomfortable, or they're like I was, where they can't lift a lot and they're embarrassed, or maybe they don't know how to lift. So they don't want to do it in front of other people. But when they go to build something at home, they think that they need to recreate that commercial gym. And that's another huge mistake. You absolutely do not need to recreate any gym you see on YouTube or any gym that you've been to in a commercial setting. What you need to do is you need to create a gym that matches your why. That's why we started with find your why first. And that will guide you every step of the way. It will help you pick out what type of flooring you buy. It will help you pick out your lighting. It will help you pick out the paint for the walls and the gear that you use. Everything will be determined by that why and by what's going to keep you consistent. So if those things aren't a home gym, if this isn't what a home gym is supposed to be, and if a commercial gym isn't what a home gym is supposed to be, what is a home gym? And I wrote an article for Living.fit called The 3 Basic Elements of a Home Gym. If you want to read this in written format, it's a great article. Great company, have some really affordable training gear. So if you're on a budget, that is one site that I can refer you to wholeheartedly. They make some great stuff, and the owner is a really great guy, really cares about putting out quality merchandise. So great place to go. But that article, basically the gist of that article is that all home gyms have 3 things, need 3 things. These 3 things are non-negotiable. And I know some people are going to argue with this, but I'm going to explain why. Number 1, you need a space to train. You don't need a garage. You don't need a full basement. You just need a space to train in. And what that space can be is going to be up to you and your living situation. If you are married with 7 kids, you're going to have a lot less space to pick from than me, who is single with no kids and lives by himself. This garage is mine. I can do with it what I want. I love it. But you may not be in that situation. And when I first started working out at home, long before the medical issues and things like that, I lived with somebody. My home gym was moving the coffee table and clearing enough space to work out with some kettlebells. That was my home gym. That was my space. I also had an indoor pull-up bar and a set of rings. So the space under the second bedroom door and a space on the living room floor, which, by the way, because I live with somebody else, Both of those things had to be put away when I was done. I was not allowed, why I'm single, to have the pull-up bar on the door or to have the kettlebells out, but that was my space. So you need to figure out what your space is, and that is going to help you drive what you can do. Because I know a lot of people, they go, well, I'm going to make this work. And what I see this all the time, they'll squeeze a power rack into a space, and when they load their bar on the J-hooks, there's literally no room between the walls and the end of the barbell to actually get in and load the weights, because they weren't cognizant of how much space they really had and what was actually going to be workable in that space. So figure out what space you're going to have. And as we go through my home gym, my garage gym rebuild, as we rebuild this whole garage from scratch, so I'm turning this into a personal training studio. It's going to be what's called a micro gym, partnering with a company called GoRx. If you're looking for a home gym to work out and you want to work out someplace without a bunch of people, go to gorx.com, I believe it is. And you can actually find, like, it's an Airbnb for home gyms. You probably find one in your area you could go work out at. And so we're going to do that. And then also, I am greatly expanding the number of things that I want to try out and demonstrate and review to show you guys. And right now, I just don't have room for those things. So my why for the rebuild of the gym is that. But as we go through, I'm going to walk you through every step of the way, what's going on with the gym, why we do it. So you're going to be able to follow along with the flooring and things. So my space is much bigger than yours, but first thing I did, I know I'm going to use the whole garage, and I know that I'm going to have to segment part of my garage to keep my garage stuff. Like, this is a house. There's a lot of this stuff. I can't keep my grill and my garbage cans in the house. And I live in a townhouse, so I can't keep them outside either. So that dictates my space. So figure out what space you have for your gym and what's going to work, what's not going to work. Okay, number 2, you need some form of resistance. Now, I made a comment before that a treadmill is not a home gym. In order to train effectively, you have to incorporate resistance training. It is a non-negotiable, all right? Study after study after study is coming out that show the myriad of benefits, from reducing depression, reducing chronic pain, reducing anxiety, lowering blood sugar, increasing bone density, helping people actually heal from osteoporosis. There are so many benefits. And if your why involves anything functional at all, from picking up your grandkids to walking around Rome and anything in between, you have to resistance train. Now, does that mean you have to train with a barbell? No. I didn't say it includes a barbell. I didn't say it includes kettlebells. It could be resistance bands. It could be body weight calisthenics. But you're going to incorporate some type of resistance. So keep that in mind. And we're going to start talking about, as the podcast progresses across the episodes, we're going to start talking about, if this is your why, then this is the best form of resistance, or best forms of resistance to pick from. And this is the things that you can buy for your gym or put in your gym that will fulfill that need. But a treadmill alone is not a gym. A treadmill alone is just a treadmill. A treadmill by itself will lose muscle off of your body. And one of the single biggest determining factors of how long you live and how well you can recover from injury down the road, and if you fall and break your hip and live or die, is how much muscle and how much strength you have. It is a non-negotiable for aging well. So you've got to have resistance in your gym. And we're going to talk about, I hated resistance training at one point, and I love it now. And I'm going to help you guys get here, I promise. There's a real easy way to, not real easy, simple, not easy way to fall in love with training with resistance. And it starts with the type of resistance training you start with. So that's the second part. You got to find a space, and you've got to find some type of resistance training. The third is you need an indoor cardio option. Now, I like to walk. I've got 2 Australian cattle dogs. Those little buggers, we go to the dog park twice a day, and I'm not talking about like a corner of AstroTurf. Our dog park is an off-leash exercise area that's 2 miles all the way around the outside through woods and hills and all kinds of fun stuff. And we go there twice a day. So my outdoor cardio option is those walks, and then I play competitive disc golf. So whenever I can, I do that. But I also live in Illinois. Sometimes in the winter, I can't go outside. Sometimes in the winter, even though I play disc golf all year long, there's some days where I'm just not going out when it's -10. All right. So we all need an indoor cardio option. Now, there's a myth out there that, especially from the strength training folks, you don't need cardio. Again, if you want to age well, cardiovascular disease is the number one killer of people in the world, in the US. I don't know the stats for the whole world, but in the US. Cardiovascular training is critical to aging well. And you need an option. So again, consistency is the key, but you need an indoor option. Now, does that indoor option have to be one of these ridiculous, expensive Peloton bikes that nobody actually enjoys using and requires some lady screaming at you on the screen to use? No. I apologize if I offended people who love Peloton, but I don't understand why you like that torture device. But that's my point. Some people look at an air assault bike as a torture device. Other people look at it as something enjoyable. I love rowing machines. And when I tell people I love rowing machines, most of them look at me like I'm insane, right? Like, that's horrible. Like, why would you like that? So everybody's got to find an indoor cardio option. And it can be as simple as a jump rope. It can be as simple as a heavy bag in your garage. I can tell you, a heavy bag, if you live a stressful life and you want a form of cardio that you look forward to doing that will gas you out and really get you a good workout, a heavy bag is a great choice. We're actually going to put one into this gym when I redesign it because I love hitting a heavy bag. So I'm going to show you how to do that as we do this gym build. But it doesn't have to be. It can be burpees. Again, a horrible thing that nobody should ever actually do, in my opinion. But if burpees are your jam, find something that you like and can be consistent with that's an indoor cardio option. And again, as we go through the podcast episodes, we're going to help you find a cardio option that is going to work for you, that you're going to be consistent at, that you enjoy. There are so many options aside from running or cycling or an elliptical, or a Stairmaster. You know, those are the four that people usually think of. And I find that those are the things that tend to become clothes racks more often than not. So those are your three basics. You just need to find how much space in your house you're going to have, what type of a resistance option you're gonna aim for or might like. And if you don't know, that's why I'm here. That's why GymCrafter was built, is to help you figure that stuff out. Same thing with that cardio option. So to wrap up this first episode of the GymCrafter that's a terrible thing to call myself. The GymCrafter podcast is, first, if you're building a home gym, start with your why. Figure out, keep asking yourself why until you drill down to something and you'll know, that is going to keep me going. Find that thing that's going to keep you going. And then look around your house, figure out how much space you've got. Do you need to move some stuff around? In one of these episodes, this garage is filled with stuff that has to go. So how do you figure out what stays? How do you figure out what goes? But figure out where you're going to put your gym, right? How much space you're going to have. And start thinking about what type of a resistance option that you're going to like, or maybe are attracted to or want to try out or want to find out more about. And then also what a good indoor cardio option is. And in the meantime, start now. One of the absolute biggest mistakes that I see people make is they wait to start until they've got their gym built. Don't do that. Start now. That could be taking a 10-minute walk after every meal. Just start there. Especially if you're in that situation that I was, where I was 45 pounds overweight. I started with a 10-minute walk after every meal. That's all I could do. I literally had to sit down out of breath after I did that. So if that's where you're starting, then that's where you're starting. But start now. Start with I used to do, a couple push-ups at every commercial break when I was watching TV. I know people don't watch commercials anymore, but back in my day, you had these commercials that came on, so you might as well do something productive with that time. And I used to get down and do push-ups during those times. Whatever it happens to be, just start doing something now. I'm going to try and release episodes once or twice a week. We'll see. Eventually, this is going to turn into a live stream, probably on Monday afternoons, and I'll do it live once we have enough people who are watching the podcast so that I can answer your questions while I'm doing this. But until then, I'm going to try and get this out once or twice a week. I'm going to try and release it every Monday so that you guys can expect it to come up. As I'm building this gym, I will probably release them a lot quicker than that, because I really need to get this done. This is wreaking havoc with my life. I've got a lot of gear to sell. I've got some giant stuff on the way from some companies who are sending me some things that I've never had before that I have to be able to have room to put together. So I'm gonna do my best to document that process as we go along. And then we're also gonna talk about the why of each of those steps. So Thanks for hanging with me on this first episode of the GymCrafter podcast. I really appreciate it. Like I said, check out GymCrafter.com. We've got a ton of resources there for you. I've got a ton of resources there for you. GymCrafter is a one-man show. If I say we, I mean me. It's just me. That's it. If you have questions, Tim@GymCrafter.com. You can drop a comment on the YouTube channel. I answer all the DMs on Instagram as well. It's @GymCrafter over there. And until the next episode, thanks a lot for hanging with me, and we'll see you next time. I'm Tim from GymCrafter.